Uh, do you want to do the intro or should I?
I can do it if you want.
Yeah. Wonderful start to the
Alrighty.
recording.
We're a mess. Relax. Just run with it. Hi, I'm RJ. I guess I'll be the DM question mark for this FPS.
You know most about what we're doing.
we probably should have outlined more who's doing what, but it's fine. We'll roll with it.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
We're doing some high-key improv. Hi, my name's Whirl. I am not your DM for the day, for once. And I am going to be playing the Candyman himself, Luka Rishe.
Meanwhile, I'm over here with my cleric, Tesse, who you may know if you've watched the Chromasthesia one-shot. Which, if you haven't, I'd recommend, because it kind of follows on from a couple weeks after that, because there was a thing that happened at the end of that you're not going to quite understand if you didn't watch it. Yeah, so, basically, at the end of that one-shot, Tessa had a vision. Tessa had a vision of a man with rainbow hair and pastel clothes who asked her to come find him. So that's what she spent the past couple weeks doing. And it's taken her this long to find this man because she knows fucking nothing about him aside from the fact that he's probably also a follower of Prismatone, and that he has rainbow hair and wears rainbow clothes. But eventually, she did manage to find him, or at least she managed to find his shop. So she's traveled from the Pixar Protectorate to Toontown to come find this mysterious man. Do you want to, describe the shop that she comes upon?
Absolutely, because I haven't actually gotten to describe it. The Abstract Medium's Candy Shop is a little, very vintage-style candy shop and soda fountain. It's just sort of on a street corner in Toontown. It's very, pastel-colored, very, it looks sweet. It looks like the entire shop is just made of candy. Not in the, it's gingerbread house aesthetic way, but in the sort of, everything is really nicely colored, everything looks really soft and really, friendly and whimsical, and just, it looks like a really cool candy shop. The kind of place where when you were little, you wanted to run in and spend hours.
Hell yes. Yeah. I have to ask, this is a very crucial point. Does the door have, a bell?
Of course the door has a bell.
Hell yes.
What kind of self-respecting candy shop does not have a bell on the door? God. The man's a mess, but at the very least he's a professional.
I need that on my resume. Yeah, so after just taking a moment to take in this building and take a moment to collect yourself, Tessa will walk in.
Okay. Do you want me to give a description of the inside too?
Yeah, sure, if you want, go ahead.
Sure. It's bigger on the inside, which is common for Toonkind buildings because, you need a lot of space to do Toonkind things, like gags and whatnot. And this space, while feasibly the size that it should be from the outside, it does seem like it's a bit more open on the inside than it looked from the outside. Like, from the outside, you could see the displays all crowded up against the window, but inside, you can just see that there are displays in the window, but there are also shelves full of candy and jars that have, hundreds upon billions of different kinds of jelly beans, and there's a display that looks like a little tree that is covered in lollipops. There's this one thing that looks kind of like a fountain, but it's got a bunch of little spigots, and each one is full of really colorful dust, and that one's labeled Stardust. If you've listened to the, Star Trio road trip games, you know what that tastes like, or two things that can taste like. And there's displays with chocolates, and then there's the counter in the back, and it's a long polished counter. They've got ice cream set up that you can order. There's a place where you can order milkshakes and sodas, and there's a cash register. And standing at the counter, looking mildly bored but interested upon hearing the bell, is the mystery man that Tessa is looking for.
Now, Tessa doesn't normally leave her family's estate very often. She's very much introverted, but she's trying to accept her role as, the heir of House Box. She's never seen anything like this before. She's slightly in awe. But having spotted her mystery man, she will step forward a little bit and go, Mr. Rishe? Are you... That's you, yes?
Oh, I'm afraid we've come to a point where you know my name and I don't know yours. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yes, I'm Luka Rishe.
Oh, of course. My name is, Tesse Vox. She's visibly very nervous in that kind of, oh gods, I'm here now, what do I do kind of way. She didn't plan this. Her lowest stat is intelligence, side with her charisma. She's not very good at this. She didn't plan at all what to do when she got here.
Oh god, and he knows that feeling. Like, he takes one look at her, sees the nerves on her face, and is like, oh, okay, this is gonna be fine. And he just, like, kind of chuckles, steps up from behind the counter, and holds out a hand for her to shake and says, "It's nice to meet you, Miss Vox."
She will shake it, and she's got kind of a firm grip. She's decently strong. But, she will go, I'm aware this will sound rather strange, but,
I've heard strange things all throughout my life. Hit me.
Have you ever heard of Prismato?
Heard of her? She's my best friend.
Oh, thank goodness. That makes this somewhat easier. Myself and my family, we are worshippers of her. We have been for, well, as long as we've existed almost. But she sent me a vision of you. I think I was meant to find you.
Oh. That's odd. She didn't tell me anything about that, but, well, I'm always happy to accept guests on her behalf. Welcome. Is there anything specific I can help you with, or would you just like to have a conversation?
I'm not sure. I was not told anything other than to come find you. I suppose a conversation would be good. Figure out what you know, you can find out what I know, that sort of thing.
He kind of laughs and, like, sets a hand on her shoulder. Like, how tall is Tessa?
Tessa is short-ish. She's 5'9".
Yeah, this guy is taller than her. He is 6'7".
Oh yeah, definitely shorter.
Or wait, no, I lied. I changed that recently. He's 6 foot flat, but he's still taller than her by about 4 inches.
Yeah.
So he sets a hand on her shoulder, and he's just like, "Relax. I don't bite."
I would hope not. Although I am... Well, She looks like she's going to say something, and then doesn't. You can roll insight on that if you want.
Absolutely. I would love to roll insight. What is my insight? Oh, it's +3. Groovy. That's a 14.
Yeah. You're not quite sure what it is she was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
But judging by the way her eyes dart to the various brightly colored confectionaries around the room, you have a sneaky suspicion it had something to do with that.
And that gives Luka an idea, because admittedly, he's kind of bad at socializing, but if there's one thing he knows better than anything, it's sweets. So He walks over to one of the different displays and has he doesn't hesitate. He like carefully contemplates which one to pick out, and he picks out a little chocolate shaped like a heart, and he gives it to her. And he says, "Here, I always find that something sweet helps break the ice and soothe my nerves."
Thank you. She will go ahead and pop it in her mouth.
Okay, roll me a d20.
Oh boy.
Relax.
It's a 17.
Okay, with a 17, the flavor of the filling of this little chocolate is not what you'd expect from a chocolate. Not in the way it would have been if you had rolled low, which would have been a bit of cognitive dissonance, but it doesn't taste like, your usual candy filling. It tastes like, what's Tessie's favorite dessert?
Probably. Yeah. Probably, strawberry flavored custard.
Well, that's what it tastes like. It tastes like just made delicious strawberry custard.
She is visibly startled and looks at him in askance and a little bit of awe.
And he just kind of smiles and says, "There's a reason I'm known for what I do."
I can see your reputation is well deserved. Might I be terribly impertinent and ask, how did you do that? How did that happen? How did the chocolate taste like that?
I want you to roll insight.
Oh boy. She's good at that. That's a 19.
Okay, you can't see this guy's eyes, but you don't need to. His entire expression lights up. And, like, because you rolled so high, you can also notice that the colors of his hair and certain parts of his clothes gain saturation. And he leans a little less heavily on his cane, and he kind of gives her a smile and says, "Would you like to learn?"
Yes, if you'd be willing to teach me.
And he just looks very excited, literal kid in a candy shop, and holds out a hand to guide her to the back room behind the counter.
She will absolutely take that hand and follow along.
Okay, he leads you into a little hallway that has one set of stairs going up and one going down, and takes you into the one that leads down into what is assumably a basement. But when you open out into the basement, it doesn't look like a basement. It looks like a garden and a workshop at the same time, and also everything's made of candy, and it's admittedly everything you imagined Willy Wonka's inventing room that the movies just never quite captured.
Tessa's hair has been slowly shifting through this gradient of rainbow. It's now shifting a lot faster.
And he notices this and he smiles and he says, "Welcome to where the magic happens. This is where I work with, well, the abstract mediums that give this shop its name. I work with different types of, not your classic ingredients, but emotional ingredients to be able to get the effects that you witnessed today, or you witnessed with that one chocolate I gave you. The reason it tasted like whatever it tasted like to you was because it accessed your favorite memory of your favorite sweet, and it tried to mimic it as closely as possible."
I did always love Mother's strawberry custard. That's magnificent. That's That's a genius.
And he blushes, and it kind of looks weird because it's pink. It's not like red like you would assume from a Toon blush. It's straight up pink. Strawberry milk pink.
That's adorable.
And he smiles and says, "If you'd like, I can show you how some of it's done. I'll admit it's a little high concept, but there are some bits that are a little easier to explain."
Certainly, I'd love to watch.
And he takes her over to one of the machines, and this one, it looks kind of like a reverse loom. There's a basket next to it that looks to be full of children's baby blankets. And he picks one of them up, carefully inspects it, and then says, "Watch closely," and sets it on the loom. And as you both watch, the fabric doesn't quite come undone, but something is definitely pulled out of it. It looks like threads of glowing, soft pink and gold light that get pulled out of it. And those are deposited in sort of a glass jar over to the side while the rest of the blanket remains unharmed.
I'm just gonna roll a quick intelligence check. Oh no! Yeah, she has no idea what's happening, but she's enjoying looking at it.
And he kind of he takes one of these threads out of the jar and hands it to her. And I want you to make me a wisdom save.
She's also good at those. That's another 19.
Okay, with a 19 like that, you manage to not get completely floored, as just this feeling of complete relaxation and comfort and safety and all the warmth and light and goodness of being wrapped up in a blanket when you were little and it was storming outside and you were scared, but you had your nice blanket, and maybe your parents came into the room and they comforted you and told you that it's okay, it's not going to hurt you, you're safe. That's what it feels like to hold this.
Roll me an insight check.
Sure. Seventeen.
Okay. He will notice as she holds this. There's her line of action wasn't tense necessarily, but it does look slightly more relaxed than it did before. He gets the feeling it's not just the effect of this thread, neither.
What you're holding there is pure, saturated comfort. I find that abandoned baby blankets are the best source of it, but I use it in a lot of my recipes because, well, that's what I try and bring people, is the same joy and comfort you're feeling right now.
That's she's kind of struggling for words a little bit here, but she looks proud of him, almost. Proud and relieved.
Roll me insight.
Oh boy.
Because he can read her expression pretty well, and she can apparently read him pretty well. Because, this guy, who looks like he's maybe somewhere between Rubber Hose and Frank and Ollie, his hair fluffs up like a Ghiblian tune, and his expression is kind of flustered because no one's ever really looked at him with that kind of proud expression before, and he's not sure how to handle it.
Oh, my heart.
And he's just, he's very proud of the work he does here. because it's taken him a long time to perfect. And, well, this might be a bit of spoilers, but it's something he's had to overcome a lot of things to be able to use without breaking down completely. So to see someone look proud of him for using it and look completely awestruck at how it works, he's kinda thrown off balance himself.
Tessa's gonna gently put the comfort back in the jar with the rest of it and go, I'd heard of what you could do. Your reputation does precede you, but this is so much better than anyone could ever describe. There's so many ways you could use this, but I think you found the best way.
I I do like to think so. Yeah. I've been working with these for years, and I didn't always use them so nicely, but I do think this is the best application of the knowledge I have, and I do try my best to use it to make things better. God knows we could use a little bit of better right now.
She looks slightly troubled for a moment and nods in agreement. And she remembers, yes, we were down here for a reason. I am here for a reason. And he goes, did you, whenabouts did you hear of Prismatone?
Do you mean most recently, or when I first met her?
The first.
Goodness, that was years ago. I was in school at the time, I think. I was going to medical school. I used to be a doctor. And I was really stressed before a test, so I went to a temple. You see, my mother was a worshipper of Prismatone. Her name was Amelia. And RJ, if you want to have Tessa roll history on that, you could find something interesting.
Oh, this is the one thing she has proficiency in terms of things. Yeah, so that's the wrong number. That's a 13. Average.
Well, given that it's family history, she'd know. Amelia Vox was, would have been Tessa's aunt if she had not left the family to be with, a man named Andrew Liner.
She twigs the name, and it's just there's this moment of wait, hold on a second. But she doesn't interrupt if you continue speaking.
Yeah, he does continue speaking. He says, my mother, her name was Amelia. She was a worshiper of Prismatone too, and she always told me stories when I was younger. She always taught me never to be afraid of the dark, because it's in the darkness that the purest colors and the truest sounds can be seen. And I had almost completely forgotten, but the one thing I never forgot was the songs she taught me. So I went to this old temple that was just off school grounds because I needed someplace quiet to sit and clear my head. And I started to play. I used to play guitar, and I started to play one of my mother's songs. And then I couldn't stop. It was like there was something holding on to the other end of the music. Um, well, as a fellow follower of Prismatone, you would know how it looks when something pulls on the line of your voice. It was like that, but I could feel it, and it pulled the song from me, and then the air split, and I was face to face with my mother's goddess. And the first thing she did was thank me, because she said that I had saved her. I've never quite understood what she meant. She never really talks about it. But that was how I first met her, is I pulled her from somewhere with the songs that my mother taught me. And in return, well, he gestures to his hair. We made a deal.
Roll me insight again, please.
Gladly. 18.
18. Yeah,
These are getting better.
Her eyes have gone very, very wide. And with that roll, you definitely catch this. She murmurs under her breath. And she goes, "You were the catalyst."
I beg pardon? He looks very confused. Like, okay, actually, I need you to roll me insight real fast.
That's a 23.
Okay, you definitely catch this. He kinda, when he catches the way that she's looking at him, he kinda shrinks back a bit, and he looks nervous and a little scared, and a lot of the color sort of just bleeds out of his hair a little bit, desaturating to a much more dusty pastel. And, he looks nervous, like he thinks he's done something wrong.
She'll quickly wave her hands. Go, "Oh, no. This is a good thing. For most of House of Ox's history was passed down through oral tradition, but many years ago, Prismatone vanished. We could not contact her. Most of her followers left. House of Ox was one of the only remaining true believers. But 5 years ago, I had a vision. Our goddess was returned. She had come back from wherever she was. She came back. You brought her back.
I just played a song in some old temple.
Well, you must have done something, right?
He kind of laughs and he mutters something that sounds like, well, that would have been a first.
The first, perhaps, but not the last. And she will gesture to the place around them.
And again, that strawberry milk pink color just goes across his face. Like, you kind of get the impression he didn't mean to say that out loud. And he says, well, whatever I did, she far and beyond repaid me. She saved my life. I owe her everything.
Can I roll insight to see if, she's curious about that story?
She can...
But if it looks like he'll be uncomfortable telling it, then she won't say it, but she won't know that insight check.
She can roll insight.
That's a nat 20.
Oh my god. Okay. How do I put this? He would be, she gets the impression that he would be willing to tell the story, but only because of who she is. She gets the impression that if it were literally anyone else, anyone who was not a long-standing follower of Prismatone, anyone who did not have, his goddess buddy's seal of approval, if it was anyone else, and even still, he would be a little hesitant now, but if it was anyone else, he would be ridiculously uncomfortable. But if she has questions, he gets the feeling that he was he was, shown to her to answer.
Okay. She sees all that and decides to change tack. You said you made a deal with her? Do you mind elaborating?
Uh, of course. And he smiles and he looks a little more relaxed, explaining, um, well, I've. Hmm. He gestures to the stuff around them and says, I've always understood stuff like this, but I was never able to work with it properly or conceptualize it properly before I made my deal because my what I got out of it was, well, aside from arguably I would say the best friend I've ever had, um, with maybe one notable person in competition, and he kind of smiles, thinking of that, but he shakes his head and says, I I asked to be able to see what she sees, what she works with, because this stuff, he gestures to it all and says, and really that's all you can call it is stuff, is, well, it's most easily found in the voice, and learning to harness and make solid the emotions found in voices was what allowed me to learn how to do all of this, to extract the properties that I could sense present in every item I ever touched and bring them forward.
Eyes are the windows to the soul, but the voice is the key to the heart.
Precisely. He looks delighted and kind of like claps his hands a little bit together and says, Yes, precisely. It's it's been a long time and a lot of stuff has happened in between, but I don't think I will ever regret making that deal. And he's kind of just looking around his workshop, looking very fond, and something she might have noticed up in the shop was that he had this kind of guarded air about him where, he was very standoffish. He was willing to put up an act if he didn't have a reason to trust her. He's not acting right now. He's just in his element and he's comfortable and surrounded by things that make him happy.
Can I just ask, how old is Luka?
Um, Luka is younger than he feels, but older than he looks. Uh, if you want a number, Luka is in his late 20s, nearing his 30s. But um, due
I don't need an
to.
exact number, that's alright.
Huh?
I said I don't need an exact number, that's alright.
Yeah. Due to stuff, he feels a lot older than he is. Just like his vibes make him feel a lot older and more tired, but he looks really young. He looks like he could be maybe 20.
Tessa looks around for a moment and you can see there is thoughts going on behind her slate grey eyes, and she kind of casually goes, my mother had a sister who I never got to meet. She would have been my aunt. She left the estate and travelled. 4 years before my birth. She never mentioned that she had a child. Do you know what became of her?
Okay, I'm going to say, like, as soon as he, like, kind of catches what you're implying and what you mean, and then you ask that question, oh boy. You've seen this guy desaturate a little bit, but his shoulders kind of slump, and the color almost completely goes out of his hair. And he says quietly, she died. I was about 16 at the time. She got sick. We couldn't find any sort of cure. That's why I ended up going to medical school. But she died.
The moment his shoulder slumped and color started to fade, her own countenance went grave, and her hair faded to almost the same color as her eyes. And she looks visibly saddened, and she goes, "Oh no."
And he doesn't say much else. He's just kind of leaning on his cane a little heavier than before, and he looks very sad. You can't see his eyes, which is weird, because, like, there's nothing seriously hiding them. It's just there's a shadow under his bangs, and for some reason, you can't see his eyeballs. But, you can't see his eyes, but you can see the set of his mouth is very, like, grim and sad, and there's just a vibe of very old grief. And the only other thing he says on the matter is, I didn't get to see her when she went.
Tesse will step forward and slowly, so that he can see that she's doing this and can move back if he doesn't want it, will put a hand, like, just on his forearm and go, "Well, we cannot replace your mother, nor would we want to, but you can have family in the rest of House Vox, if you so desire."
And I want you to roll insight for me again.
That's 23.
That's a 23. God. That plus 7.
She's got a plus 7.
That plus 7 is
proficiency in insight.
That plus 7 is really something, huh? Well, she can see there's a sort of hesitance. Like, he wants to say something. He wants to try and take her up on this offer, but also there is a very old guardedness about him, a very firm desire to not get attached to people. And his expression kind of shudders off a little bit, because you get the impression he's very used to having to hide his emotions. And he smiles at her and says, "That's very kind of you to say."
She'll see this and move back slightly, and then reach into one of her pockets. That's the wrong dice. Let's roll the correct dice this time. Yeah, she reaches into one of her pockets, and she pulls out a pair of stones. And then she will hold one out to him and go, "Well, I will admit I did not expect to find kin when I came looking, but I did anticipate wanting to keep in touch. These are sending stones. You can speak into it, and I will receive it, and then I can reply to you on the other end, no matter how far apart we are. You don't have to take it, but it is an offer there if you want it."
He takes the sending stone and looks at it, looking a little surprised, because somebody who isn't that one specific person wants to keep in contact with him? What? But he smiles at her, and she gets the sense that this is something that he's a little more comfortable with. And he nods and he says, "Thank you. I will keep that in mind." And then he clears his throat, claps his hands, looks around, and said, "Right. I did say I was going to teach you to make something."
She's suddenly very excited again.
And he's got some of that excitement too. His colors are starting to come back. And he, tries to think, what would be the easiest? I don't want to start you off with anything that could get you hurt. And he, leads her over to one of these machines that looks a little less like a machine and a little more just like a piece of a kitchen. And he smiles and says, "Why don't we start with what I first learned to work with, image candy."
She looks very intrigued at that, and she's wearing leather greaves, their arm guards. She'll take them off, and she'll take off her signet ring and put it safely in her pockets, ready to do things. Roll up her sleeves.
And his sleeves are already rolled up, and he grabs 2 pairs of sturdy leather gloves from the drawer of this little kitchen chunk. It's not a kitchenette. It's just like a freestanding chunk of kitchen.
The best kind of kitchen.
It's just a freestanding little nugget of kitchen that's in the middle of this otherwise whimsical garden-like place. It's interesting because it almost looks like a chunk of a kitchen was just broken off of a normal sort of 1950s suburban America house and just dropped in here like a chunk of a dollhouse.
Hell yeah.
And he hands her a pair of gloves and then goes about getting a bunch of different things. He gets a really big copper pot and sets that on the stove and kicks up the flames and starts pouring in sugar and asks, "All right, what flavor do you want to make it?"
She'll freeze for a moment and then go, "Strawberry."
Good choice. And he walks over to a different section of this workspace. You're not even sure if you can call it properly a garden, because there are just chunks of building like this everywhere in this space. Where, he goes over to what looks like a piece of a library, except the shelves aren't full of books, they're full of different jars. And he, sorts through them and picks out a couple of them. One of which is full of a bright red syrup, which you can assume is strawberry flavoring. And then he picks out a couple others, and these are, smaller vials. And he takes them over and says, and, shows them to her and says, "All right. This one causes feelings of joy. This one is comfort, as I just showed you. This one is energy." And, he goes through the different, he has 6 different bottles that he shows her that have different effects, and he's letting her pick which 3 she wants to put in, because each candy can only take about 3 flavors per batch. 3 magic-y, emotional flavors per batch.
So that was joy, comfort, energy. What are the other 3?
Joy, comfort, energy, excitement, what was the... I actually had this prepped in advance and then I forgot about it.
It happens.
There's, nostalgia, and there is, I can words. There's, infatuation. Not love potion infatuation, because I know there are 2 people in the crowd who will get on my ass because they know the context for me working with anything that causes that kind of feeling. But more of the, you have a crush, but you're really scared to talk to them, but you could eat this and it would make you have the confidence in your love to talk to the person you like.
So something we should have given Primrose, Tobias, and Marcel ages ago.
Yes. Basically. Right. And also, I just peeked into the peanut gallery. Yes, Lewis, that is a reference. Yes, Lewis, that is a reference to that conversation. No, I will not tell the rest of you what that conversation was.
Yeah, she's gonna pick joy, nostalgia, and energy.
Oh, that's an interesting combination. Usually, when I mix something up with nostalgia, I try and make it a bit of a downer. But this should be an interesting one. And he shows her. He lets her do the pouring and mixing herself because he's very much a believer in hands-on learning. But he explains to her how to measure out different amounts, what to watch for in the color of the sugar, how to make sure it's bubbling properly, that sort of thing.
She's got this almost childlike look of intense focus on her face as she follows his instructions to the letter. It's almost adorable. This is a 23-year-old looking like a child.
Oh my god. His hair is fluffed up and he's just like, oh my god, that's so cute. He doesn't say that out loud. He doesn't say that out loud, but he is absolutely thinking, oh my god, she's adorable.
In answer to his comment about mixing things with nostalgia to make it downer, she'll just say, what's the point in looking back if it doesn't make you want to go forward?
And he tilts his head, and he gets this almost inspired look on his face, and raises a finger and says, I think I might have something else to add to this mixture. Hang on. And he mixes up another batch of sugar and adds in a few other different kinds of flavoring to it. And mixes them up. And he says, my favorite dessert personally has always been strawberry shortcake. And that's his explanation as he mixes in flavors for vanilla and cream into his sugar mixture. And once they have their sugars all melted up together, he guides Tessa over to one of the big flat cooling tables, sets up a frame and says, all right, you're going to want to take your big bubbling pot of sugar. Try not to burn yourself. I've done it multiple times and it hurts like a bitch. But you're going to want to try and upend it over this table and pour the sugar into the frame.
One thing you will have noticed is that her hands are covered in calluses. She's clearly worked hard. But yeah, she goes, yeah, of course. Pulls on the gloves. Don't want to burn herself.
Good
grab the pot and do the thing. Do you want to roll anything for that? Or
why don't you roll me dexterity just to make sure nothing spills?
I was about to ask check or save, but it's the same modifier either way.
Yeah.
That's a dirty 20. I'll take it.
Yeah, you're fine. You pour this out onto the table, and it's this lovely, bubbly, amber, liquid, gooey goodness that just spills over the table. And Luka does the same, and he's like, all right, next we're going to try and mix in our colors. What's your favorite color?
Kind of light, almost pastel purple.
Oh,
it's the same
lavender.
color as her shirt, actually.
He snaps his fingers. Lavender. Okay. So what we're going to want to do is put a few drops of purple coloring into your batch of sugar. And then we are going to want to mix it up like so. He shows her by pouring a few drops of pink coloring into his own batch of sugar and then taking a wooden stir stick and just very quickly stirring it and saying, you want to boil out all of the water in the food coloring. So here, he hands her the purple food coloring and says, just a couple drops.
She will add just a couple drops.
Hey, we're leaving. I wanted to let you know. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Someone knocked on my door.
Yeah, she will add just a couple drops and then go ahead and stir it properly.
Right. You get this all mixed up, and it's like there's a puff of steam in your face, and it kind of smells chemical because food coloring, but he looks really pleased and says, okay, so what you're going to want to do next is a little more tricky. Come with me. And he takes her over to where he's got a hook on the wall. And he says, you ever seen one of these before?
Let's roll intelligence and find out. That's a 12. She vaguely recognizes it. She thinks she probably has, but she's not quite sure what it's for or what it's called.
This is just called it's called a candy hook. He smiles. And he shows her by basically tossing the lump of colored sugar onto the hook and shows her how you pull sugar. And there's a second hook on the wall next to her, and I think we should probably roll both. We should both roll either strength or constitution to see how well we do with our sugar pulling. I'm going to roll strength.
It's the same roll for me either way. She's got a 16 in both.
I'm going to roll with
It's a 12 for Tessa.
I'm going to roll strength for Luka and do it with advantage because he's been doing this for years. We'll take the 15. Okay.
15.
So, Tessa, as you're doing this, you start to get a little worn out because, oh man, this stuff is heavy. What the hell? And then you look over at Luka and he's just having a good time. He's just doing it really easy. And this man is built like a twig. You get the feeling a strong breeze could probably knock him over. But he's actually apparently really strong because he just pulls this sugar like it's nothing. And he explains to you that when you're pulling the sugar, what you're doing is you're mixing in air bubbles. And that helps both the flavor and the color. Because the more air bubbles, the more air gets trapped in the sugar, which lightens the color. But it also creates more surface area for the candy to hit your tongue, and that makes the flavor more saturated.
That's neat. That's really neat.
I am a candy nerd.
Clearly.
But
she's watching what he's doing with avid focus and then attempting to replicate it herself. Like she's fairly strong. She's got muscle tone. She's not jacked or anything, but she's fairly built. But it's almost humorous watching this much visually stronger looking woman try to mimic the movements of this twig man and not quite get it.
Yeah.
But get close enough.
Yeah. And I mean, it might also be because they're very different kinds of tunes. Like, if I remember right, Tessa is Frank and Ollie?
Yes, Tessa is Frank and Ollie.
Yeah, whereas Luka is half rubber hose and definitely looks it, especially when you see him in motion. And eventually, like, you guys have pulled your sugars out to a really nice, light color, and he looks at them and says, yes, these will go nicely together. And takes her over to a different table. And he says, okay, this part's very fun. It's a bit like playing with Play-Doh. And he takes out a pair of scissors and shows her how to cut the chunks of candy into different pieces. And says, okay, what kind of image do you think we want to put in this?
A diamond.
Diamond it is. All right. So you're going to want to cut, and then he because I don't actually know the math of doing image candy, I just have watched a whole lot of videos about making image candy.
Yeah.
He explains to her, okay, this is how you cut this. We're going to need this white sugar to make a block so that the image is visible, and then we're going to take this extra bit and we're going to make a wrap for it. And basically he shows her and helps her in assembling this candy. And eventually they have a big fat log that's sitting in front of them. And Tessa this doesn't look like what she knows image candy looks like. It looks like a really fat, kind of melty image candy. but it doesn't look like a normal image candy, so what gives?
She's gonna roll intelligence, see if she can figure out what they do next. Nope, she has no idea. Gods.
Does she
Tessa and the 4s for intelligence checks, good lord.
does she like say anything about it, or does she have a look of confusion? What's her deal?
She looks mildly confused, but she's totally willing to go with it and follow his instructions.
And he kind of laughs at the look of confusion and like carefully guides her hand. He doesn't explain anything. He just carefully guides her hand and shows her how to pinch the end of the log and taper it off while still to taper it off and start pulling it into rods while still maintaining the image within the candy without warping it too badly. Basically, you have to keep the candy rolling, but you have to roll it back and forth and pull on one end.
Nice.
And as they're doing this, as she watches, the candy continues to lighten in color until it's these very soft pink and purple pastels wrapped around white with a pink and purple diamond in the middle. And as she pulls the rods, Luka cuts them from the main one until they've completely run out of sugar. And he smiles and says, "While we wait for that to cool, would you like something to drink?"
Certainly.
And he walks her over to a different area, which kind of looks a bit more like a mini bar, except not alcoholic because we are Toons. And Toons don't do alcohol. Who are you kidding? XXX? No, that's just juice. And he mixes her up a milkshake. A strawberry flavored milkshake. And for himself, he makes a chocolate one. And roll me perception real fast. And I'm gonna roll sleight of hand.
That's a 24 for Tessa's perception.
Yep.
Okay, so this.
Yeah, you notice as like he's sitting down with you to enjoy these tasty looking milkshakes because these are delicious. He pulls out a small vial, like one of the ones that he showed you earlier, but it's so much more, the stuff inside is so much more brightly saturated. It's glowing gold, and he like unstoppers the top and takes a small sip and then closes it up and puts it back into his vest pocket. And he smiles at her and says, "You know, you could make a really good candy maker. You've got the hands for it."
She notices the vial, and she's a little bit curious. So she'll go, "Thank you. What's that, if you don't mind me asking? The vial?"
It's hard to say that he pales because his skin is already gray, but he kind of winces a little bit and laughs a little awkwardly and says, "It's medicine, actually. I have to take that every once in a while. Not as often as I used to, thank goodness. Used to be I had to take it every half hour, but, nowadays I can get away with every 3 or 4 hours or so. It's just a habit at this point."
Oh. She'll think hard for a moment and then go, I am a cleric, I believe I mentioned this. I might be able to do something to help you, if you would want me to try, of course. I could not do this without your permission.
And he looks really flattered and really touched, and he gets that, like, blush on his face again of, I don't know how to deal with people acting like they care about me. People are concerned for my well-being. What is this? What is this witchcraft? But he kind of laughs and says, "I appreciate it, but I I've gotten as close to cured as I'm ever going to get. Um, but it's all right. It's manageable. I appreciate the concern, but he he like pulls out the little bottle and taps it and then puts it back and says, "This is all I really need to keep me stable, and I've gotten to the point where, well, at the very least I can make my own joy again, but um the rest, I'm afraid I'm as cured as I'm going to get without bleeding myself completely dry."
She does look visibly concerned. Roll me an insight check.
Sure. I don't think he's quite realizing that he's saying as much as he's saying. That's a 13.
She looks concerned.
Dang it, the thing about rolling low on insight is that I always want to...
I can tell you later if you want. So she looks concerned, but nods, and she's instinctively gone to grasp a pendant around her neck, and she lets it go. And because she's pulled it out of her shirt now, you can see it's the symbol of prismatone, but it's overlaid over this large diamond that looks almost like a crest.
And he tilts his head and asks, "Is there a story behind that? It's a very pretty necklace."
And she reaches into her pocket and digs around and pulls out her ring. And she will put it on the table in front of him for him to look at. And she goes, "This is my holy symbol. I'm a cleric of prismatone, as is befits a member of House of Ox, but the symbol itself is overset over my family crest."
And he looks very interested because he's never actually met somebody who is an organized worshiper of Prismatone before. He's never met anyone who is like a cleric of his deity. Like, he knows she's a deity, but with their relationship, it's really hard for him to think of her as such. So seeing this like evidence of, yeah, there are people who straight up worship her as a deity is interesting to him, to say the least. And he smiles and says, "I'm afraid I don't know much about familial traditions. The Liner family is not the type of people I choose to associate with anymore. But it really is charming how deep it seems to run with your family."
She'll take a sip of her milkshake, and she's thinking hard, and then she picks up and looks at her holy symbol and goes, "No one is quite sure whether the House of Ox existed before Prismatone. Our records go back far, but they don't say whether or not we had a history before her. There are some in the family who believe that she, intentionally or otherwise, created our lineage. We have worshipped her for as long as we have existed, or close enough to."
And he kind of... go ahead.
It is why our crest is her symbol, included with a diamond to represent us, our being.
And he kind of smiles and has that look on his face, like, you know, when you know a friend and you hear something that they did and it's like, yep, that's something they would have done.
Yeah.
He just has this look on his face of, yep, that sounds like Priz. And he says, "Well, if she did create you, I'm sure she cares about you very much. She loves all of her creations, even the ones she makes by accident. Did you know that she told me, back in the day when her job was just guarding the audiole, her first experiment with magic ended in her creating the Foley Men. And, most people, if their magic created something like that, would try and find a way to get rid of it because, oh crap, I accidentally created something sentient. Not Prismatone. She just looked at it and said, fuck it, these are my children now.
Tessa, while trained in history, all of House of Vox are, just as standard, she's not great at remembering all of the stories and everything. So it rings a vague bell, but she looks utterly delighted by it.
Well, there is a solid difference in hearing a story, told from a history book and hearing a story from somebody who was told it from the first person.
Yeah. That's a fair point, actually.
From the history books or the myth books, it probably sounded like, oh, this big grand thing. And he's like, yeah, no, she was playing with her magic one day, screwed up, accidentally created people, and was like, well, fuck it, these are my kids now.
She looks delighted, and she grins slightly as she puts her signet ring back in her pocket and goes, I have a sneaking suspicion. Well, that does provide a little bit more evidence as to the accidental creation of us, of House Vox. Because I believe she also gifted us with the gift of prophecy. It's not something that happens in every member of House Vox. It often does skip generations, but it is strong when it appears. I myself have it. It's really curious.
He tips his head, because he's never heard of Prismatone being associated with prophecy before, because she's not really a fate, forward-thinking type goddess, if that makes sense. Her deal is very much in the moment, emotion and feeling and self-actualization and honesty and voice. And so hearing that she had given somebody the gift of prophecy is interesting because that's not really her deal. And he says, well, she must love your family very, very much then.
Tessa she's definitely contemplating this new revelation about the Foley Men. Sipping at her milkshake as she does.
I should say, by the way, it's a really goddamn good milkshake.
Yeah, no, I fully expected it to be. Her hair goes from regular rainbow gradient shuffling through to rapid rainbow gradient shuffling through and very, very bright. The moment she first tasted this, and it has not shifted since.
Yeah. This isn't just your average strawberry milkshake. It is thick, and it's creamy, and it's sweet, and it's kinda got the sourness of strawberries, and there are, chunks of strawberry in there, and it's just the best strawberry milkshake you've ever had.
This isn't a regular strawberry milkshake. This is an advanced strawberry milkshake.
Damn right! The man knows one thing well, and it's sugar. But he kind of looks up from the conversation and says, I think the candy's cool if you'd like to try and cut it.
Ooh, yes, please.
Can I just say, he and I both love how excited she is about this.
Normally she wouldn't be this animated, but just like how Luka was much more guarded up in the store and is more relaxed down here, she is much the same way, because he's shown himself to be trustworthy, and she's very relieved by that, and also the revelation of him being family, too. It's made her drop all her public guards.
And he shows her how to gather up the rods of candy and takes them over to a tiny little anvil and picks up what looks like a bench scraper, which is not actually for scraping benches. It's a kind of big, thin metal thing with a handle on it, and basically you use it for cutting things. And he shows her how you leverage the candy against the edge of the anvil and then just lightly and very quickly tap it with the bench scraper to send the candy pinging off into little tasty bite-sized chunks.
And she's taking to this task with visible glee.
And he's loving how happy this is making her, because that's the one thing he really wants to do, is he wants to make people happy. And this isn't just him making people happy with something he's made. This is him making someone happy by sharing something he loves. And that's just big deal. Big deal. And he kind of thinks for a minute and says, I usually don't let people down here, but if you ever wanted to come by and visit, I don't think I would mind having another candy making partner every once in a while.
She beams. She is so happy. And she pats her pocket where she put the other sending stone and goes, I'll make sure to send one to Head.
And he laughs, and roll me perception.
I should know what this is. It's a +7. That's a 15. That's not great for her.
I mean, it's good enough to notice what happens. The shadow that covers his eyes, that sort of clings underneath his hair and covers his eyes, sort of fades away. And you can see his eyes for only a couple seconds. But you can see that he has 3 eyes, and all of them right now are glowing with joy. Bright golden yellow.
Me, RJ, I'm so happy right now. Tessa is, actually, hang on. Okay. Yeah. She kind of manages to hide her reaction. It gets a little startled out of her and a little shocked and surprised furthering of the beam. But yeah, she mostly manages to remain calm.
And the shadows go back over really quickly. It's almost like he didn't notice it happened, but there was enough of a lapse in his concentration of keeping up that spell that, you managed to get a glimpse of his eyes for a second. And, he, awkwardly coughs to break the, just standing there smiling at each other silence. And, once Tessa has finished cutting up the candy, he smiles, and he passes her one, and says, well, your invention, do you want first taste test?
Oh, thank you. She will go ahead and try it.
It tastes like strawberry ice cream and cake. And it feels like strawberry ice cream and cake. There's a feeling of warmth and of coolness, like warm cake fresh out of the oven that's been served with a scoop of strawberry ice cream. And then there's a feeling of, there's the sensation of nostalgia, of warm memories, of remembering being back someplace where you had these happy times, where maybe you didn't have this specific flavor, but you had something similar, some kind of, dessert that made you feel really good, and you had, people around you who you loved and who made you happy, and you get actually, I need you to roll me insight. Of course.
That's 19 plus 7. I hit enter too soon.
19 plus 7. Okay. So basically high enough. You get the feeling that not only did the emotions that you poured into the candy go into the candy, but the sensations and feelings of how you were feeling when you were making the candy also went into it. And
so utter glee and laser focus.
yeah, and that kind of helps with the feeling of being buoyed up and pushed to move forward and do something good, to take the happy memories you have and do something wonderful with them. That's what this candy feels like, is the inspiration and hope to do more with your future. To take what was good about the past and make it better. And, I mean, congratulations, you've made candy.
Her eyes glitter, and then she looks at him and goes, "How much for a bag is that?"
You made it, I'm not going to charge.
I mean, you did notice the bag.
Nonsense. It's not work when you're doing it with somebody who's as enthusiastic about it as you are. And he smiles and grabs a little paper bag and takes about half of the candy they've made and puts it in there. And ties it with a little pink and yellow striped ribbon, because pink and yellow stripes is sort of the theme of the place. And he hands it to her. And actually, I'd like you to roll me a history check real fast.
Oh boy. That's an 18, I'll take it.
As you've been looking for this guy, you did actually hear something recently. That his candy seems to have gotten better since he started wearing his hair down. And with what little you've put together, with the fact that, he's mentioned finding a cure for whatever his sickness is, you don't have any reference on that, but the fact that he's mentioned that he's made whatever is ailing him manageable, the fact that he's mentioned that he has another candy making partner, because she would be another one, not just a candy making partner. The fact that, he just seems happy. You get the impression that, oh, that's why the candy's been tasting better. Because if you feel terrible, what you make is going to be terrible. But if you feel good, what you make will be amazing.
Nice. That's really clever. I like that.
I think that would probably be a good place to end, with him giving her the bag of candy. Do you have anything else you wanted to do with it?
No, I mean, as she's walking out, she'll probably pop another piece in her mouth because it's just so good. But yeah, no.
And I do think he does, take some for himself as well, before putting the rest in with the experimental flavors of image candy in the shop.
Nice.
And I think he calls the candies Lavender Afternoons.
That's a really sweet name.
Yeah. And I think, do we want to end there? I can end the recording.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop.
Okie dokie. Everyone say goodbye to the listeners. Goodbye, listeners!
Goodbye, listeners.